Alrighty, guys. Hi, I'm Natalie Min, CEO, FMI Guild, here with a special webinar with my guest, Brad Thorpe. He is the sponsor and an upcoming speaker for our Fitness MBA Summit. And for those who don't know, the Fitness MBA Summit is a yearly event that we produce here in California. This year's going to be in Long Beach, where we like to bring together all of the industry's experts, people who are doing really cool things in the market, and sharing their knowledge and teaching and creating a tribe where we can collectively become better business leaders within the fitness industry. With Brad, he's going to be a speaker, and he's also going to be holding a pre-con workshop where he will do a deep dive into isometric exercise and how trainers can use it to grow their business and strengthen up their expertise. So Brad, thank you very much for joining us. A little bit about Brad. He is very much an expert on isometric exercise. He is a co-founder of Striration 6 Exercise and Performance Center based in the Toronto area, three-time U.S. and Canadian patent holder, and creator of the IsoFit, the isometric training system. So thank you very much, Brad. Go ahead and say hi.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. It's been an absolute pleasure dealing with the FMI Guild thus far over the last sort of 6 months. And, if there's anyone out there who's looking to get into the fitness industry, obviously highly recommended that they reach out, get a hold of you guys, figure out what's going on over at the FMI, and more importantly, join us in Long Beach. It looks like an unbelievable cast. And, once again, thank you very much for having me today.
Beyond honored to be able to bring experience in the exercise science area. And then I also have with us today the man who made the introductions between us and our link, my business partner and executive director, Gary Warren. So he's not going to be on video, he's on audio, so you're going to see him represented as a blue head as he talks, but say hi, Gary.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, cool. So we had a little bit of fun start trying to get the technology together, but Brad Thorpe, tell us a little bit more about his background, and I have a couple of questions where I'm going to ask him a little bit more about isometric exercise and how it can help you blast through your fitness goals. So go ahead, take the stage.
Well, a little bit about myself. I'm an elder statesman within the Canadian fitness scene, for lack of a better word. And I believe it was Malcolm Gladwell that likes to talk about being an expert after you've achieved 10,000 hours. So with over 23 years of experience, I believe I've surpassed 40,000 hours. So I'm kind of call it 4 times the expert. And especially relative to the world of isometric-based exercise, there's very few people out there, I guess, what I have in that subject area. And as you mentioned, I do have currently 3 U.S. patents. A 4th one has actually been recently, since we last spoke, granted. So I do have actually 4 U.S. patents now, and 8 on basically throughout the world, and that covers off Japan, China, India, Brazil, Australia, the European Union, as well as Canada. So I really kind of lead the world in isometric-based exercise. And where I kind of got my beginning was I had the privilege of studying under the world's foremost experts in 2 specific categories, and their names are Tom Purvis. He's the world's foremost expert on exercise mechanics, so he's worked with everyone from NASM. He left there, I believe, over 14 or 16 years ago by now. He's worked with Nautilus Corporation. Most people would know him as the pitch man for Bowflex. He was on the the Bowflex commercial for, I believe it was almost 15 years, and I may be incorrect in that sort of duration.
Was he the model then in the videos, or was he like the spokesperson?
He was the spokesperson for it. He was always the guy in the blue shirt.
Got it.
So great guy. Taught me a lot about exercise mechanics, and we're going back. I got into that program in around 2002 through 2003 is when I was introduced to that. So a long time ago. And then from there, I was introduced to a program called the Muscle Activation Techniques program, and that was created by a gentleman by the name of Greg Roskoff. And Greg was a biomechanics specialist out for the Denver Broncos and the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz when I first met him. And he created this program called the Muscle Activation Techniques. And what that is, it's a systematic approach at identifying and correcting muscle imbalance. Right? So between the 2 different programs, I was given a great insight into the world of exercise. Now, prior to that, I went to school in Toronto for Fitness and Lifestyles Management, which was a 3-year sort of exercise program, and that was in the sort of early to mid 90s. And so, as I said, I've been around a long, long time. But one time, now historically, what people would have said about isometric-based exercise was it was bad for blood pressure, and you shouldn't really do it because we got this obsession, rightfully or wrongfully so, we got this obsession with motion, right, and movement. And the problem with that is, not that there is a problem with movement, there's a problem with the fact that we lack stability and we lack strength prior to adding movement, right? So, and that's where the isometric stuff comes in, where we're not here to sort of tell you that, you know, don't do dynamic motion. What we're here to tell you is add isometrics before you do your dynamic exercise, right? It's kind of like if you were to try to add instability to an unstable person, and you expect that person to all of a sudden become more stable. It doesn't really work that way. And if you think about what movement is, movement's just a series of unstable sort of actions that allow you to change position, right? So adding motion to motion equals, unfortunately, not better motion. It actually equals worse motion. That's why we age so poorly, right? You know, as we get older, we used to be like, have great strides and great walking mechanisms and everything like that, and really be able to tolerate a lot of, you know, force and to do a lot of things. But the problem becomes, well, once we get sort of to a certain age, we actually start getting looser. And what they recommend is get further looser and now add motion. Where I'm sort of positioning myself in our platform is let's get stronger and let's get more stable through isometric-based exercise before you go for your run, before you play football, before you get on the basketball court and wonder why you keep injuring yourself, right? So that's kind of a nutshell of where we, you know, isometrics and basically ISOFIT has come into play.
And you know, this is it's amazing points. It makes me actually think about the Olympics and all the athletes who are doing their hardcore explosive movements and a heavily trained body. I want to dumb this down for just a second because I think about when, for me, I guess I thought of myself as an expert in a sense. I'm really good at following fitness directions, but I'm definitely not a science expert of it. But having done competitive fitness before, I was very familiar with resistance training and those type of movements. Movements in general is the best way to sum it up. And I just did not have a mental grasp of what in the world was isometric exercise, which really means like more like static holds while applying pressure. And it wasn't until Gary showed me a real-life example when we had one of the former FMI students. She came over by my house. Gary just happened to have his a flat massage table where he could perform the therapy on, and she was a competitive track athlete. I think at one point she was like training for the Olympics. She was a college hurdler. She had an accident a couple years back where, of all things, she was running on a treadmill and she was flung off the treadmill and hit the wall. And from that had back pain and then had more limited range of motion in her legs as she was stretching. So she never was able to have the full efforts in her training. Gary laid her down and immediately went through the muscle activation techniques where he was working out the I don't know the exact term for it. It looks like he was kind of giving like pressure massage, but it was working on the joints and putting the muscle back into the inserts or something. But you know, as he was following this through her body, and he was explaining that everything is connected together and body parts overcompensate for the weak ones. Sorry. And within the next hour, she did the secondary test to see if she had full range of motion, and she was blown away that through this 1 hour of therapy, she was able to have full range of motion, something that she hasn't had in a number of years. Did I get that right, Gary? Let's see if Gary's still there.
Wait a minute. You're close, yes.
Close. I mean, that's what it looked like to me, and I was just like, at that point, then I felt like, okay, this is something I need to be more aware of, because the results that she achieved within 1 hour was something that she could not recover on her own within a couple years. So yeah, that's something when I think about isometric exercise and the work that you do. I guess right now I'm mentally attaching it to someone who has injuries, or as you mentioned, like some weaknesses in their body parts, and it can actually strengthen them so that they can perform at a higher level. So let me know if I'm on the right vein with that one.
It's very similar. It's very similar to that in the sense that if you're able to increase the contractility of a muscle, i.e., you want to create more tension. If you keep changing the location, let's say you're doing a bicep curl, and I think we're on. So if I keep moving my hand, you'll see it keeps jumping out of the screen. Versus if I just kept my hand there and I actually sort of applied a little bit of force and I pulled into that, I can generate more force within that muscle at a specific angle, right? So one of the things with isometrics is it allows you to create better levels of muscle contraction throughout a muscle for multiple ranges in a very easy format, right? Because there's a lot of physics and a lot of science behind exercise that a lot of the general population, to be honest, they just don't know, and they may not even care. You know, so it's up for the trainers and it's up for the sort of the leaders of the industry to really kind of sort of dumb it down, to be honest, and sort of say, you know what, this is how you get a better muscle contraction, right? If I continually keep jumping out of the screen, well, guess what? It's really hard to figure out where I am, right? If I just stay there, you can lock in and train that and get a better reaction, right? So when you're looking at some of the muscles, if I have a better way to contract it, why wouldn't I just do it, right? And I'm not saying, once again, don't not do the dynamic stuff, it's just add this, right? So if I can have this frame, and then this frame, and then this frame, and then this frame, and then I string it all together, I'm going to have exceptional movement with excellent control. Right? So with that lady who you were speaking of, if she lacked muscle control, why should she have better movement? Her brain is going to limit something, right? Whether it's inhibiting the muscle function of one of the muscles that's responsible for that movement, or you know, it's just instead of causing rotation, it might instead of causing so rotation would be that, right? So as opposed to causing like translation, which would be sort of more sliding across. So if a muscle pulls it into translation, it's going to cause joint compression, which will impact movement. So it's really about learning how to rotate your body, right? And the more muscles you have working are really, at the end of the day, going to be able to tolerate more force, i.e. you can do more stuff, and they're going to be able to generate more force. So what you can do is, you know, withstand a lot more, uneven ground if you're running. If you're lifting a little bit too much weight on a bench press, well, if you're lifting too much, you know which direction the bar goes. It goes all the way down, right? And then you have to unfortunately dump it off your chest, and hopefully you don't hurt yourself, right? But it comes back to, can you control muscle function? And a lot of people at the end of the day, they simply can't, right? So, but one of the things I do want to explain to people is what is isometric training before we get too far involved.
Sure.
Right? Just because a lot of people don't actually know what it is, right? And everyone wants to have some sort of word association with, well, what is it he's talking about? So a plank would be a form of isometric, right? Where you're sitting there holding that static hold, right? Or pushing into an immovable object, right? So you cannot overcome that mass, right? So it's when you're able to generate muscle or a contraction within the muscle when you're not really changing the length of the joint, right? The muscle will still work dynamically in the sense that it still oscillates based off fatigue and effort, but the joint itself doesn't change position, right? So that's your plank, that's your wall sit. And really up until we had ISOFIT, we didn't have very many options from a gym-based exercise perspective. I mean, you can always pull into a wall or, as I said, an immovable object such as a car if you're outside. A tree is a great option, but it comes back to just learning what you're supposed to do.
Okay, gotcha. So when I think about isometric exercise, and maybe it's just because of my limited exposure to it, I saw this huge advantage for people who have injury or limited range of motion. Like maybe the guy who, or even myself, I have a weak shoulder, for example. Is that something where, like for me as a consumer, I should look more to isometric exercise to help me strengthen out this area?
I would say definitely it would be an adjunct. You would want to start with isometrics. Now, historically, isometrics has been used in the physical therapy realm, a lot of post-rehab type platforms have used isometrics. Like it's recommended by chiropractors, massage therapists, physical therapists, most sports trainers, most strength coaches will all recommend isometrics, but it never had that sexiness to it, right? It's like
I'm accomplishing anything because I'm not pushing something where I can like have a measurable like that was 20 pounds or that was 30 pounds, I guess.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the difficult things with isometrics is people do want that measure, right? And it is something that I personally am working on to get on my exercise product. But the problem with sort of the IT side of things, it gets really expensive. And there are some products out on the market, like, for example, ISOFIT will do, well, it restrains all human joint motion. So I'm not sure how many exercises it does, but let's, for argument's sake, say 100, because I'm quite comfortable to sort of demonstrate 100 exercises. So there's a product on the market called biodensity, and it's used for osteogenic rehabilitation. So what that means is rehabbing your bone. So if you have osteoarthritis or osteopenia or osteoporosis, this is a great exercise protocol to use, and it's an isometric-based format. So their machine is wonderful, it's great, it does all the data management if you want, but it's $49,000.
Oh my gosh.
And it does 4 things, right? Where, you know, my exercise product is $12,000 and does everything. So I can recreate every gym-based exercise on one machine.
So we can really just say, like, if someone wants to know their actual progress, well then lift a weight using that same range of motion, what you're trying to strengthen, before and then after, and then see if you have an improvement. Would that be?
Well, exactly. It's the same measure you would have in a dynamic world. Can I lift more? You know, can I hold a little bit longer? Or if you're a runner, can I run faster? Or if you're an individual who has pain, did the pain reside? Right? Because there's an analgesic effect to isometrics, meaning short-term isometrics can actually get rid of pain, both relative to muscular pain as well as tendon-based pain, which are slightly different. And you know, there's a lot of other sort of huge benefits associated with isometrics that they're now starting to find out, because historically, as I said, they shied away from it because it was you know, not the glamorous side of exercise, or not the glamorous side of rehabilitation. So, but it's with isometrics, everything from it improves your blood pressure, it gets rid of back pain, it actually helps increase your metabolic activity so you can burn more fat. They're now finding
Compared to resistance exercise,
or through isometrics. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So it's imagine, so with the burn fat comment, think in terms of fuel efficiency, right? We sell automobiles based on fuel efficiency. So we want to actually maintain gasoline in our car, right? We don't want to burn through that. Now, if we look at humans, and let's say they happen to be a little bit larger, they are carrying a little bit too much body fat, do you want fuel efficiency or do you want fuel inefficiency? Because if my goal is to burn more calories, I want to be in a fuel inefficient model, right? And there's nothing more fuel inefficient than pulling into something that doesn't move, right? A comparison that people would understand would almost be like doing a burnout in your car, right? So you remember this back to when you were 16 years old, right? Right? So when you got your foot on the gas and you got your foot on the brake, right? You don't go anywhere, but the energy expenditure is enormous. Right? In certain instances, if you do it long enough, you will see fire. You will see the tire rupture, and you will smell this god-awful burnt rubber. Right? So think of that rubber as your fat. Right? And there was a study that was released in the Journal of Applied Physiology in 1996 that actually compared maximum sprinting for 30 seconds from a caloric expenditure, and it was specific to the vastus lateralis, which is a muscle on the side of your leg, one of your quadricep muscles, to 30 seconds of maximum isometrics. And what they found was the caloric expenditure was pretty much the identical same.
Get the heck out of here. Okay.
Yeah. So you can do 30 seconds of maximum sprinting, right? Because what it does, it jumps from sprinting involves your whole body. It's very efficient. Where isometrics actually really, well, it can involve your whole body depending on the platform you create, i.e. squeeze every muscle, then do exercise, right? So what you can do is create this environment where every muscle is burning at an optimal level, right? Which is kind of cool. And now
it's stationary, so it's not like you need the space, the 100 meters to perform your exercise and hit that max. You actually could be in a box.
Well, exactly. And for those individuals who are new to fitness, I would never recommend going and sprinting.
Yeah, right? Go run as fast as you can.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm new to fitness, I'm out of shape, I might be older, and I'm carrying a little bit too much fat around my gut. Let's call it for what it is. Oh yeah, go sprint. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So what it will lead, and this is not a knock towards CrossFit at all, because a lot of the wrong people did CrossFit when they shouldn't have.
They weren't ready, per se, for the movement.
CrossFit hurt a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people were just ill-prepared for CrossFit, right? As they position themselves, it's the sport of exercise, all right? And as with any sport, you take a professional football player, for example. Let's say he's actually good. Well, he might spend 20 minutes a game playing out of a 60-minute game. He will spend his whole life training to get there first and foremost, but on a given week, he's probably exercising, 7 through 14 hours. He's probably got time in the rehab room as well, so let's say every day for an hour. So let's call him anywhere between 7 and 20 or 7 and 21 hours of dedicated time for 20 minutes, right? And high probability he doesn't even play 20 minutes. If you're an NFL player. If you're an NHL hockey player, you're almost guaranteed to play 12, and with requiring the same amount of output to prepare for it, right? So your average sort of office worker, newbie exercise person, well, they actually need to prepare for exercise. And that's where that isometric component comes in, right? The office worker, who works 40 hours a week to 60 to 80 hours, has prepared, call it really, maybe if they're really good, an hour a week. So what do they expect? Why don't they expect to be injured? They should. They really should expect to be injured. And it's unfortunate that they don't believe that they can get better. And they can. And it's a matter of just learning how to really contract their muscles before you move them. And then add the movement component, right? It's actually not too hard, because in my facility in Toronto, and we're an 11,000 square foot facility, and I work with everyone from professional models to like amateur and professional athletes to basically your CEOs and your medical doctors, right? And the general population as well. And the one common thread is they all need to increase their physical performance. Right? It doesn't matter if you're injured, you still need to increase your performance. And just by hoping and praying, I have this thing, we call it hope and pray, is really what most exercise people look at when they try to make it better, versus if you slow it down to the point of an isometric contraction, you can actually start dictating muscle function. So you get rid of the guess. It's now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to dictate your outcome. Right, and I noticed there's a desk right behind you. So if we can do like a little bit of an experiment, right? If you just sort of reach back with your left arm and press into the actual desk, right, and kind of just press down, right?
Down.
Yeah, down towards the ground. Feel how you feel that in your lat and sort of your tricep, right? Like I've never worked with you, but based off that's obstructing movement going towards your body, it's going to respond instantly. Right? So if you turn your hand over and have your palm face up, right, just so that, and now pull down, feel how that's totally different. It's going to be, well, more in your tricep, a little bit less in your lat, a little bit less. Yeah, kind of in through there, right? But feel how instant you felt that.
Instantly,
right?
Yeah.
There is no guesswork. Now, if you were to just take your arm away from the table and obviously don't hit your flowers, and just move your arm up and down, right? Where the hell do you feel that?
Not even everywhere. I don't know. I'm just slapping arms.
Well, it comes back to the hope, pray, and guess, right? It's like, I guess I'm working this. I hope I'm working this. And oh, please, God, let me work this.
Oh, my gosh. It just totally clicked right now, because most people have some level of an imperfect form when they're doing a a resistance movement, you could be overcompensating for various body parts, but with isometric exercise, you're hitting it like a target, actually.
Yeah,
you know exactly what you're hitting, and you know exactly how much pressure you're applying. Exactly. I mean, I'm doing it for 10 seconds. I feel my scalp like slightly sweating already, you know, and I'm not even pushing, and I'm trying to push while being pretty for camera. So well, that's an interesting point to be able to have that muscle control. Because I think about when I do, let's say I do like a rear delt fly. I'm on a bench, and if my arms are tired, they start sagging, and then other muscles start compensating. Versus just doing something like this, very controlled.
Yeah, like if you had a straight bar in front of you and you just grabbed the bar, right, and held it here. I'll try to get my hands in the screen. If I just hold Y, but I was fixed to a bar, your rear delts are going to pop out instantly. There's no guesswork to rear delt training. It's actually really simple. It's just, but when you keep doing this, I keep changing the emphasis. You know, so yes, the muscle's going through a great range, but it went from rear delt to rhomboid to teres minor, teres major to infraspinatus, you know, to name a couple of those ones that would be responsible for that movement pattern that you thought, oh, I'm just only doing rear delt. Well, if you actually want to do rear delt, just do rear delt. Stop with the, you know, the movement-based stuff because it gets complicated. And we're talking really complicated when you're looking at sort of fixing muscle. Or, sorry, I shouldn't use fixing muscle. I should sort of say stimulating muscle.
Okay, so this actually brought up that something you see a lot of time on social media. They're talking about squats, ass to the grass, full range of motion. If you do anything less, you're going to have less range of motion. Or when someone talks about bicep curls, make sure you're doing full extensions because if you don't get that full extension, you're going to end up with a half-extended arm full time. Now, is isometric exercise like an extreme version of that concept? I mean, are you reducing your range of motion by focusing so much at a specific point and angle?
You would be... If you were, let's say you only did one side of that joint, right? So let's say you only did the bicep, and I did biceps, and I just did isometrics like this, and I never bothered to do the one on the other side, so my tricep that would go like this way, right? So if I don't train those muscles, yes, you will have a certain level of adaptive shortening, right? Just based off, you know, you know those guys in the gym that do chest press and lat pull down.
But they never work out.
Around and they're always like, oh, look at me, I work out. You know, they're kind of comical, and then they move like this, and, you know, I should slide my camera back so if I'm going to make fun of them, everyone
can better see that.
Yeah, like, so if I stand up and I, like, you know, I work out here, because most people do, like, a chest press, they'll do a lat pull down, they'll do a bicep curl, but what they fail to recognize is all three of those muscles actually cause internal rotation at your shoulder joint. Right, so that's going to pull them there, and then those same guys are going to go and do some crunches. So now I'm going to be walking around like this, you know, and they don't know how to fix it. Well, it's called go the other way. You know? So learn how to extend your spine. Learn how to turn your arms out for once in a while. You know, sitting up is really simple. All you have to do is actually stop doing crunches and learn how to do extension of your spine. But the problem is, don't do this. You know, this is how we try to fix stuff, you know, and it's like, well, what the hell is this going to fix? If we're doing all of this, I was like, well, I want to learn how to sit at my desk. Okay, then why are you moving so much? Why? The problem isn't the fact that we don't move enough. The problem is we don't know how not to move, right? You need to sit at your desk for 8 hours. Well, that's an isometric contraction for 8 hours. The world record for plank, I think, is 5 hours and 17 minutes or 31 minutes.
Plank guy, I saw that video on Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, it's like crazy. Like, I mean, they're taking it to a whole nother level. But you look at it and you just go, well, there's different ways we can look at it. Like, if you wanted to work on your spinal extension to help you sit better at your desk right now, just actually sit up at tall and use the back of your chair, right, as a form of resistance.
Like, as in pushing my back into the chair.
Yeah, but don't try to recline, but use the back. Basically, yeah, I'm just trying to sit up. Right? And what you'll feel is similar to the table, you'll feel that in your mid-spine, right? And it doesn't take much time, right? So there's a lot of different ways we can use simple apparatuses around us to make a healthier workforce, for example, right? So, you know, because we're talking to fitness professionals who are looking to earn income and generate business, being able to walk into a business and say, I can help your staff reduce basically their absenteeism. I can increase their performance. I can do all of this wonderful stuff, and they don't even have to leave their desk, right? So how great from a production perspective is that? I mean, they've now brought out walking desks, and I'm going to say they are ridiculously stupid because most of those people shouldn't be walking for distances in the first place, right? Let alone with their arms out here, like it's like the Pokemon zombies we got walking around these days.
Oh my God.
Like, it's insane. So it's like they need to take exercise serious and better prepare for it and actually focus on what they're trying to do, right? And because you brought up squats a second ago and you brought up bicep curls, they're actually more of a dynamic, like everyone thinks they're dynamic-based exercise, right? So if you take a bicep curl, you're standing there with usually good posture, you're sort of standing here, and then it's like, oh, I can't move my body, and I got to do this. Because if I did this, which is dynamic exercise, well, this is a really bad sort of aerobic class, and also basically just bad form. Versus, well, oh my God, my whole body worked isometrically to maintain a platform, and then I moved one joint. It's arguably more than one, but that's a different conversation.
Sure.
Right, so it's like, okay, so that's more of an isometric than it is a dynamic exercise. Bench press, same comment. You lie on your back on a bench, you put your feet on the ground, you grab the bar, and ideally you don't squirm. Right? Anytime you squirm, which is dynamic exercise or dynamic movement, you say bad form. But when you're stable and the platform doesn't move, you say, that's excellent, that's a dynamic exercise. It's like, no, that's isometric-based platforming with dynamic-based movement over a couple joints. But the majority of the joints aren't moving, right? So it's all this stuff we forget to look at and analyze exercise with. Squats, because you brought up that as well, that's mostly an isometric as well, right? You got your hip, ankle, and knee that moves, basically. Yeah, the respiratory muscles will cause a little displacement within the rib cage. But ideally, if you go to squat down and you shift, wow, I hope you're not lifting much weight, because that's going to hurt you.
Right.
So
the reality is we are using isometric exercise to support ourselves to make our movement stronger, but if we just simplify it even further, we're going to increase our strength in what we're actually trying to focus on.
Well, exactly. And so how I simplify it for people when looking at it, like the comparison between dynamic exercise and isometric exercise, right? Dynamic exercise is really between going from a position, so let's call that position A, to position B, right? It's about the movement. It's about going from here to here. It doesn't matter how you do it or how you accomplish it, usually speaking. Obviously, with the Olympics and being judged right now, yes, it does matter, but that's not the everyday person. But in their scenario, it's still about going between A and B. Where isometrics, what it really is, it's about generating strength and stability, because your goal with isometrics is not to move. And there's nothing more stable than not moving. Right, and it's one of those simple things. We just go, yeah, that's good. Oftentimes, isometrics was associated with postural muscles, right? So it'd be like, oh yeah, well those are for those small postural muscles. If we as an industry got rid of the term postural muscle, and I'm going to swear once on your show, and I do apologize. If we could get rid of the term postural muscles and said, we're going to train the shit that holds you together muscles, you would do isometrics all the time, right? Because they're the ones that hold you together, right? They're the ones that fire first when you're looking at a contraction type. You have isometric contractions, you have concentric contractions, and you have eccentric contractions. So the transitional phase of exercise is the isometric contraction, right? Type 1 muscle fibers historically are better prepared and better trained through isometric-based contractions, right? Which is the stuff that really kind of holds you together, right? And there's a lot of different things they're now finding out, neurologically speaking, as well as from a cardiovascular function perspective, that by adding isometrics, you can change a lot of stuff, like lowering your blood pressure, as I mentioned earlier, right? Like the Mayo Clinic, which is arguably the world's leading institute in, well, health, to be honest, and medical outcomes. They now have in their proceedings section on their website a whole article on isometrics, and they even state within this article that it's superior to aerobic training and resistance training for lowering blood pressure in a hypertensive population, right? And how important that is there's 1 billion people currently with hypertension on the planet, right? So it's a huge market. right? So, but yeah, so that's pretty much, I won't get into too much of the science side of things. We'll make people sort of come to our seminar and stuff.
Okay, so I have one last question. I hate doing cardio. I would rather lift heavy stuff up and down all day long. Now, I heard you mention a stat regarding it's superior for versus cardiovascular exercise in pertaining to the hypertension. But in general, it's safe to say then that you would get a higher caloric burn as well using isometric exercise over cardiovascular? Yeah, because you mentioned the sprinting. Right?
Yeah, so you get a very similar one. The problem is it's really hard to compare both of them directly because you can't do 20 minutes of cardio consistently, right? I know very few people that can actually sustain a contraction for 20 minutes. Now you can do intervals, like you could do 20 minutes of 1 minute on, change exercise, 1 minute on, change exercise, and do almost like a isometric circuit style program, which I do with a lot of my clients over a half hour. So they've all noticed a huge increase in their cardiovascular function, right? Because we forget how the blood gets back to the heart, right? We always think when we're looking at cardio, we always talk about the atrial side of the equation. So there's, just for your listenership, there's the atrial side, so there's the heart and the sort of basically your capillaries and arteries and everything like that on that side. And then you have your venous side, so that's your veins, so how the blood gets back to your heart. So on the atrial side, it houses 35% of your blood volume, right? And you have your MBA. If you're running a corporation, do you want to focus on 35% of the company or 65% of your company? So you can be perfect over here and still be broke, right?
Right.
What you need to do is focus on venous return. How does the blood get back to the heart? And that's 99.2% controlled via muscle function, right? And the best way to enhance muscle function is through isometric-based exercise, right? So if I can make the venous return more efficient, because I can increase the rate of contractility to muscles that I might not know the names of. So it acts as a muscle pump, right? So muscles, well, if you have less muscles in a muscle pump, you're going to have a poor circulation, right? Now here's where it gets really kind of cool when you're looking at sort of the mass of somebody's arm. Right? If you look at your circulatory system as nothing more than a series of rubber tubes, right? So you got like a little circle, right? If I stretch a tube, if I grab a tube and I lengthen it, the diameter of that circle narrows, right? So by virtue of having poor muscle function of my shoulders, right, and not being able to hold my humerus, that's the upper arm bone, into my body at that glenohumeral joint, which is your shoulder, what will happen is there's a stretch placed on that artery, and there's also a stretch placed on the vein, right? So you're having almost like a two-sided sort of mishap, for lack of a better word. So the artery narrows, there's a blockage within the actual flow of the blood, there's a narrowing of the arteries from an epithelial tissue perspective. That's the elastic sort of, or the muscle structure associated with sort of smooth muscle. So what happens is that's placed under a stretch, so it no longer does what it's supposed to do anymore. Right, so there's a lot of little things that like that where it's like, oh, but I need to improve my running. Well, then you would also want to talk about how are you going to improve your running performance, right? So your cardiovascular system really is a servant. Now, there will be a lot of people that dispute this sort of statement, but it's really a servant to your muscular system and really your other organs, right? It's there to circulate blood and work in the sort of the gas exchange cycle to help bring in fresh air, oxygen, and really get rid of carbon dioxide, right? And that's really, well, if I can increase the return phase of blood, well, I'm going to become more efficient at getting rid of that sort of waste byproduct of the gas exchange cycle, which are your metabolites and stuff like that, or that carbon dioxide, which there's not a lot of research out there on this, and it's a very assumptive statement, but I'm gonna say it leads to almost inflammation within the joints and the muscles and all that, just having an abundance of metabolite formation, right? So if we can get that out of there, maybe we can reduce the amount of inflammation within the joint, right? So oftentimes and this is outside my scope, but most professionals will sort of say inflammation is caused because of poor nutritional choices. And they will never say it's caused because of really, really, really stupid exercise choices, right? So it's a different way to look at it. right? So it's just, once again, add this. And what they've noticed is there's an analgesic effect to isometrics. It lowers blood pressure, so the analgesic side gets rid of pain. It burns more calories, and it increases muscle strength for the stuff that you love to do. So if you want to run more, if you want, as I said earlier, if you want to do all these activities you love, if you want to walk on the beach and not hurt, you want to look better, all of this comes into play because the tone of your muscle tissue that you're not thinking about right now is in an isometric contraction, right? It doesn't sit here and go, oh yes, I'm talking to Natalie right now, and oh yes, my muscle's working. Well, that enhanced tension or that tone to the muscle, that's an isometric contraction as well, right? So things that we don't look upon.
I feel like it's like I just opened up the dark web and just landed on like the encyclopedia of like all the shit that I don't know about. Like, where does all this stuff come from? Like, you hear about all these health issues, you hear about all these other sideways approaches to how to solve it, but as you're talking about it right now and linking it all back to a single thing that you could add into what you might be already doing or not doing, which is just exercise, you can alleviate so many health issues.
Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of them. They're now linking poor isometric strength in adolescence, and this is specific to a male population, to an increased risk in Parkinson's disease, an increased risk of cardiovascular disease in young adults. And it's kind of like, okay, well, neurological disorders as well as cardiovascular disease. Why is that? Well, maybe if your body is not held together properly, right, why should it work properly? Right, and it starts young, and we engage in activity, and we tell these people to run and play and do this stuff, but they're ill prepared to do it, right? And if we were able to increase the isometric component, i.e., if we can, well, here's an analogy, right? Imagine that life is about driving an automobile around a track, right? And yes, people will sort of say they hate this analogy already because everyone always compares it to automobiles, but Americans, for some reason, understand the automobile far greater than they understand that you're driving around a track, right? And all of a sudden your bolts on your car start to become loose, right? So that's aging, right? That's us getting older, right? We naturally shrink a little bit more due to dehydration within the intervertebral discs. That's the sacs that shock absorb between your spine. So they shrink a little bit, right? So they're getting looser, right? Your knees get a little bit looser. Everyone has parents, so they've seen them age, usually speaking, and they start walking a little bit with less confidence. So you're driving around that track, and then all of a sudden it's like the world of exercise comes out and says, well, we're going to fix you. We're going to stare at you as you move. Okay, well, I still got rattly bolts, and my wheels are still wobbling, and my mechanics become less efficient, my fuel efficiency goes down. That's not good in an automobile scenario. Their recommendation is to drive further, drive harder, and drive faster with a shitty car. Versus, why don't you just stop the car and tighten the damn bolts and then go drive again? And now if we could tighten the bolts every day before you drove your car to work or wherever it was you wanted to do, maybe you would have a better, call it life, or better quality of life, or better drive in this scenario, right? It's like in NASCAR, well, hell, over 500 miles, right? How many times do they have a pit stop, right? They tighten the bolts every time they put new wheels on. There's a reason for that. It increases performance, right? So just a different way to look at it, right? So a simple analogy associated with automobiles applied to your body, right? And one of the things, as I said, everyone that I've seen, everyone that I've worked with, for the most part, there'll be the outlier who, gives up a little bit sooner, but that's very rare in my schedule anyways. And they've all gotten better, right? They're, the athletes, they're all lifting heavier loads. Like we took a guy who was preparing for his first deadlift or a powerlifting competition, and he went from, and this is literally using about 4 minutes of isometrics a week. And some people would question this sort of statement, say, was he on steroids? The answer was no. He went from 480 pounds to 545 pounds in 3 months.
Holy schmoly.
On his personal record. One of the gentlemen I work with, he's in the national volleyball program in Canada. He was a 16-year-old kid. He set the national touch height record at 12 feet 3 inches. We helped him gain 3 inches on his vertical touch in 7 hours of training. Right? I've helped a gentleman lose 38 pounds, or 37 pounds, sorry, in 10 weeks with 2 hours of isometrics and an hour of cardio a week with limited diet modification, because he was a 28-year-old guy who wanted to go drinking with his buddies on the weekend. So he didn't really change much outside of the fact that he did this. And you know, the one thing that I love seeing the most is the individuals who come to me with back pain or hypertension issues. And when all of a sudden, within usually anywhere between 10 days and 3 weeks, right, we'll spread it out just a little bit. Hypertension's usually restored, pain's usually gone, and they're functioning better, and we've improved the quality of their life, right? And that's just some of my doctor clients that I deal with, right? So those are the interesting ones, is when you take somebody who is an area expert in pain management and you help them resolve their pain through isometrics. And you know, it's kind of boastful, but a lot of the individuals I work with are professional people of a medical background, right? I kind of like to collect them, to be honest, because, well, I like helping people, and if I can get those people who are area thought leaders to disseminate that message to their people, it's going to help spread that message a lot faster, right? And you know, one of the things that governs my life, which a lot of people don't know, you know, they think I'm in this for business, and yes, I am a business owner, and I am here, but my primary goal is really to create health, change lives, and give back. So that's why I do what I do, right? And I'm just fortunate I'm able to do it hourly, and now with people buying exercise product, be it the IsoFit, we're in over 30 locations down throughout the United States and growing every day. I had a Major League Baseball team phone me yesterday and sort of say, we want some for our spring training facility. You know, so it's we're now into the professional sports leagues, which is great, and their athletes have been using, you know, the product in their various cities. I won't mention the name because I'm not allowed to yet. But down in Orlando, that sort of general area, they practice for their spring break, and what the results we're seeing are amazing, right? One of the guys who deals with the New York Giants, and he noticed there was a 30% increase in force output after 6 minutes of use, right? So you got 30% better in 6 minutes. Like, and he's dealing with professional athletes, right? And it's pretty remarkable with what they're able to see. So yeah, so we can help everybody, and it's also the aged. I work with people in their 80s, right? They all notice. They call it the fountain of youth. Out of one of my buddies who has an IsoFit in Scottsdale, Arizona, at Muscle Activation Techniques of Scottsdale, he basically sent me an email sort of saying, people are calling it the fountain of youth. They actually feel better within the first session, right?
This captures the whole audience. When I think about, because I help a lot of fitness entrepreneurs create their fitness programs, packaging it into ebooks or whatnot, writing out their plans. There's always that huge thing where it's like, if there's anything wrong with you, use caution and talk to a doctor about trying to do any of these movements. But Isometric seems like it's capturing this audience of people who do have things wrong with them, and now they can actually do something.
Yes, well, absolutely. And it's you know, the scale of what this can become is so vast, right? It touches upon everybody, because what human doesn't require better function, right? Where everyone, and you know, because I've dealt with a lot of marketing specialists over the last couple of years, they're like, well, you need to pick a genre. I'm like, I did. It's called human. Figure out the marketing side to that. It's because it can benefit kids. It can benefit the old people. It can benefit fat people. It can benefit skinny people. It can benefit bodybuilders. Bodybuilding is nothing more than isometrics on stage to music, right? Flex a muscle. That's isometrics. Their whole sport is isometrics. You know, it's you know, it becomes quite comical when it's like, how the hell hasn't anybody figured this out before me? I'm a small town kid who liked exercise. You know, at the end of the day, so it's you know, and as I said, my goal is only to help people. So it's been a fun ride. But it's probably one of the most complex subject areas that we can study, which is being human. I mean, they just there was this thing, and I posted it to Facebook last night, which I was blown away with. So they've in your brain. So there's this human connectome protocol, or what is it? I'll come back to it later, but it's I'll just have to jump offline and figure what it is. But what they do is they basically mapped the human brain, and they found 100 new regions within the human brain that we didn't know about until really 3 weeks ago. Right? So, and what they're finding with isometric-based exercise is the scaffolding structure within the human brain is called white matter. What they found was isometrics. Now, this is a subsequent different study. What they found was isometrics, and we're talking 6 minutes a week, was enough to actually stimulate growth of this white matter within your brain. So with individuals who have, 6 minutes of not moving, can reorganize the brain structures that basically create conscious thought, memory, and everyday function. Right? So we're able to change brain matter with isometrics, and very efficiently. So in that, and there's no direct link right now to that sort of Parkinson's disease from that study per se. It's like, okay, well, if you have this study over here that says poor isometric strength increases your likelihood of Parkinson's disease, and we're talking small scale, like 2 to 3%. But then over here we're saying, okay, isometrics helps formulate the white matter in your brain, which is, once again, the stuff that holds your, like, that sort of tissue within your brain. So these are areas that other people can go research, because that's not my cup of tea. But I'm really good at gathering the data and sort of say, well, did you look at this and this and this and this and this? And it's like you have all this web of health. And can you fix it all and get better with it, right? Because we all know exercise is one of the magic cures to everything. We just need to figure out what we mean by exercise and how do we exercise appropriately, right? If you're ill-prepared for exercise, let's say, Natalie, your goal is to touch the wall beside you. You don't have to tie your hands behind your back and run head first. Right? So you can actually just walk over and touch the wall, right? And if you think of that analogy and you go, okay, great, what's the IsoFit? It's basically a wall restraint device. So it can restrain all human motion, similar to your desk restrained your arm earlier, right? A wall, that's going to restrain motion as well, right? So, and that's pretty much it. I mean, at the end of the day, you add this isometric component to your dynamic motion, and you'll notice almost an instantaneous improvement to your everyday life or quality of life.
So yeah, I think about if I was in a trainer's shoes and I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, I opened up this other half of the market, which was always very scary to work with, because now they can use isometric exercise to fix their body parts. We're opening up. I mean, obviously, we're helping a lot with the time efficiency to get your workout done, because you are hitting maximal exertion in such a small amount of time. So, even if someone's late for their training, I can probably just switch it up just a little bit, and what could have been only a 45-minute production, they would be smoked in 30, right? By just kind of having this extra toolkit in your pack. So if I was as a layman, how can I incorporate more isometric exercise? I know you have your invention, which is an amazing product. If someone has the money and the investment to do something like this, I would highly recommend getting this, because of the square footage that it actually fits in. It could actually fit in your house, or if you're a professional, fit into a small space to work with your person. But let's say if it's someone like me, I don't have that kind of equipment. What can I do to do isometric exercise? I know the wall sit. I know of the planks.
Well, a lot of it, if you think about how you would contract a muscle, right? So I'm just going to sort of skew this down, and I'll slide back a little bit to get more in frame, right? But if I'm sitting in a chair, right, all I have to do is learn how to go, like that would be a side crunch, right? And squeeze the muscle for 6 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is from a duration perspective. If you did that for 2 minutes, you're going to all of a sudden end up with a nice sort of midsection, right? Right? You could sort of rotate and side bend, right? You could crunch straight forward.
Just contract. Literally just contract whatever movement you need to do.
Exactly. Now, if I wanted to use a wall, right, so if I use this wall beside me. So let's say I'm sitting in a chair, and I'm going to do like almost like a backswing, right? I could use that to basically mimic this movement, right? But I just pull there. And if I relocated my feet, well, I'm going to be at a different angle and a different angle, right? So it becomes really, really simple, right? Like for a, let's say that posterior deltoid, contraction we were talking about earlier. If I just pull back into that, well, it's not going to move, so it's going to provide the resistance I want it to. Now, it doesn't really work so well going up because it doesn't have a restraint. But let's say you use the underside of your desk. You could pull into that, right? Like if I stood up and I came over to the wall, and I'll raise my leg up here, but if I pulled it into there, and of course I don't have shoes on because I wasn't expecting to show my feet.
Because we're on a video and that's what we do,
Perfect, right? But if I did something like that where it's like, okay, that can restrain my motion, right? Or if I did a glute thing where I put my foot straight back into the wall, right? So I can do every muscle in my body without, well, I hate to say it, you can do it without my machine. But it just makes it so much more efficient.
Your machine makes it exact. That's the beauty of it.
Right, and it makes it simple. Like everyone says, oh, you can do isometrics anywhere. Yeah, you can. Good luck, right? You can do all your cervical muscles. You can do every muscle in your body, as I said, without really having to go anywhere and without actually having to think too much about it. But when you're looking at the general population, it's literally like, just learn to contract muscle and stop moving. Like, obviously, you have to get into a position. But once you get there, actually spend some time and try to squeeze the muscle. Right?
Maybe time yourself. Maybe take out your phone and time how long you can hold it, and slowly increase your hold time.
Exactly. I think in terms of contraction time versus hold time, right? Because a lot of people, when they think hold, they think don't do anything.
Yeah.
Where contraction, right? Yeah. So when it's like contraction, it's like, no, I'm actually squeezing right now, right? And I'm trying to squeeze harder, right? It's like that bodybuilder on stage who's trying to flex those muscles and sort of say, hey, camera, photographer dude, look at all this, and you got these great sort of finger abs type thing, or the serratus anterior, right? And, I pitched a modeling agency a couple of years ago, and the modeling agency is called Spot 6 Model Management, and they're Canada's largest modeling agency. And so I've had the privilege of working with some very, very beautiful people, but those beautiful people need to get ready for photo shoots really quick, right? And with isometrics, it's rapid fat loss. Like it's quick because these people are already dieted perfect for the most part. They're already slender and everything like that. But if you think about, avoid the caloric expenditure side. If you think about what a photograph is, it's a still image. It's an isometric. So if I can increase the ability for a model to pose better, well, now the camera is going to love you more. You're going to now become more employable, and also you're going to have better muscle tone, right? And it's really interesting, and that's one of the reasons that I love what the FMI Guild is, right? Because the origins is Fitness Modeling International, right? And it's like, awesome. This is just perfect for the community.
You hit the nail on the head, literally, because I do fitness photography, and that is the one thing that is actually the bottleneck of my photo shoots, is how long can the model hold the position, repeat, and hold. Yeah. I can get by multiple angles and whatnot. So when I have the real professionals, when I'm working in LA and I have these people who are like, yeah, this is what they do full time, there is a marked difference of the intensity that they can hold for an extended period of time.
Yep. Welcome to the world of isometrics, right? And that's the thing. We've been doing it all along. We just never noticed.
And I think, okay, if I had to take the reverse scenario, I get a newbie. He is a meatball. You're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. The guy gets smoked in 7 minutes. He's like, I'm done. I gotta go. I'm like, well, I didn't even do it. I can't work with you. I can't even get my photos. So this is something on the flip side that, to the point that you're making, exactly. If you want to be a fitness model, you got to be able to last longer than 7 minutes. Even if you look the part for 2 seconds, that's not enough for me.
Exactly. And I noticed Gary laughed in there. Gary, turn your mind out of the gutter, buddy.
Oh, no.
This is so cool. I'm just like, I literally feel like this is amazing. This is just mind-blowing. Okay.
Yeah,
so
as I said, it's just, it's just one of those things. If you take the time to just say the names of the muscle contractions, right? You have concentric, you have eccentric, and you have isometric. Two are moving, so that's the dynamic world, and then you have one that you've totally forgot about, right? It's 50% of the equation, right? So if I can improve the 50% of the equation, and I'm already pretty damn good, be it an athlete, be it a model, be it just an average Joe who feels good, you're going to feel better faster, right? So it's going to help you look better, it's going to help you feel better, and it's going to, you know, to be honest, it's going to help you function better, right? And it doesn't take much time, and honestly, it doesn't take that much effort either. You know, I see results with people within 10 to 15 minutes of committed time a day, right? Now it's daily, you know, which we'd ask the people to commit to, right? Because when aren't you using your muscles? You know, you need to prepare. It'd be like almost like you go to fly on a plane and the pilot said, well, I checked the plane last week. You know, he checks it before every flight, right? Kind of makes some sense. So before you get up well, not before you get up, but before you start doing anything with your day, why not prepare the muscles to tolerate the forces associated with your day? You're going to go for a run, and, you know, most people's warm-up is do the same activity at slower rates versus, well, where was your warm-up? You just, you know, your goal is not overheating. That's not considered a warm-up. It's about neurological preparedness. Did you prepare your neuromuscular system, or your nervous system, and your muscular system, and your cardiovascular system for the run that you're about to do? Or did you just go run and sort of say, I'm not going to think about anything as I'm doing this, right? Which is the usual, because they put on their music, and then they go run. Oftentimes, and this is not a knock, well, it is a knock towards stretching. So stretching I don't necessarily think is the most advisable for most people. Certain instances it's advisable. But it's kind of like you look at stretching, and it's kind of like you're about to go for your run, and I ask you to undo your shoelaces. Right?
Oh, that's interesting. 'Cause I was going to say, like, in my mind, I had framed it as, okay, the person who does any sort of training, they're always advised to do some yoga, which is kind of like just stretching, right, to kind of off balance whatever they've done with their training. But now, and then I was thinking, okay, maybe I need to cut my resistance training in half and give a portion to isometrics. So what you're saying is perhaps take out the stretching aspects altogether and just implement isometric.
Now, I will go with yes, but you need to clearly define what is stretching versus, right? So a lot of muscle contractions, most people would look at as stretching. Like if you were to reach over your head right now, you know, and you basically sort of reach up like this, right? Okay. So this is shortening, right? So that's not stretching, right? If I reach forward, that's shortening. If I reach back, that's shortening, right? We're looking at the wrong side. You're looking here versus the stuff that did the movement. Like if I looked here, if this deltoid shortened, my arm goes up. If my bicep shortened, it goes here. So we usually call this lengthening, right? But the muscles are fixed to bone. The muscles don't get longer. So think in terms of they're just less short, right? Because if this shortens this way, this is still short. This is still short. This is still short. It's back to zero short. It's like acceleration in your car. You have not moving, and then you have moving, or acceleration, right? Positive and negative acceleration. So, but if I'm going this way, this bicep doesn't go boing. It doesn't spring open. It's this muscle over here shortening, right? Shortening, shortening. If I go to my shoulder, shortening, lat, shortening, and other various sort of shoulder depressors and adductors, right? So it's, if we just don't understand enough about muscle function, right? Muscles only, like if you were to detach a muscle, like i.e. you tore it off your body, right? Mm-hmm. Muscles are elastic in quality, right? They don't get longer. They actually shoot up into little balls, right? And anybody who's ever torn a muscle, Achilles tendon, something to that, it shoots up into a ball.
Right. Yeah, you see it like in their leg or their calf is like shrunk or something. Yeah.
Bulges up, goes into the state of contracture that's just awful, and you hear this audible sound which is like a gun going off. It's horrid. But the muscles get shorter, right? Because muscles are fixed at birth, and then we grow up, and then we reach our peak height. Now the problem is, then we start to shrink again. So the muscles become lax. There's slack within the muscle tissue. There's slack within the tendon structure. There's slack now within the ligaments.
There's slack in the skin of my face. I see it already. Aging.
And you're 93, right? So it eventually happens, right? But what we forget about is, and a lot of the stuff with the sort of the facial stuff, just because you go there, it's your skull shrinking. Your skull shrinks. So the platform actually gets a little bit smaller.
Right. That's why when we say when we see our parents and they actually shrunk, that's what we're referring to. Yeah.
Your skull, your bones, everything shrinks a little bit, right? That's why people don't get continually taller with aging, right? Whatever mechanisms at play that becomes slightly, slowed down with aging, well, it affects all of us, right? So how do we maintain levels of tightness is what we should be asking. It's not about looseness. Looseness is associated with flabby skin, right? Do you want loose abs or do you want rock hard abs? Well, 9 times out of 10 you're going, I want rock hard abs, I want a firm butt, I want tight triceps. So, but when it comes to tension, you go, oh, I don't want to be tense. But it's like you're going to the gym to increase tension, right? So it's just, unfortunately, we've been, the marketing terms that a lot of people have used, well, people bought into them, right? Tension's great. I want a firm, rock hard ass, right? You put that on every fitness magazine for a reason, because every person wants that. Every person that doesn't like the way they look, it's because they're too loose, not because they're too fit looking or too firm looking. Say, oh my God, I actually look good today. That's great, thank you. But you don't usually see that person who's in front of the mirror going, wow, this jiggly belly, this is awesome. They tend to, and this is not in all circumstances because I don't know everybody, but they tend to feel like uncomfortable, sort of call it being naked, right? Where it's like, oh, well, if you were fitter and firmer, well, it maybe have some additional benefits, let's call it, right? So, but yeah, so that's pretty much all I got at my end.
That's like the phrase of the night that just pops out my head is, if as you get older, everything loosens up. Isometrics tightens everything.
Yeah.
That's just the gist of it.
Basically, yeah, in a very, very safe, easy, and highly effective way.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so then I think we kind of covered about how we can do this on our own. We just have to use our own, just find a source where or can just contract. For people, how they can use this in their business. Tell me about the IsoFit machine that you created. Do you have like something that we can see real fast? I don't know if we're not in the right location or not.
Nope, we're not in the right location at all.
Well, you can go to isofit.com, which is ISOPHIT.com. Is that correct?
Yep, that is it. And also Instagram, I posted a whole lot of stuff over there. So that's IsoFit Inventor Brad Thorpe is the sort of the call handle for that.
And then I'll put that in the detail of the video. And I do want to definitely say, anyone who's watching this video, I found that his Instagram was the easiest for me to understand, coming from a position as a consumer and not a professional, because it was short, little, concise bits of how it's being how Isometrics is being used in IsoFit. Extremely educational. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I spent a fair bit of time on that site. I love it. So it's it's easier as you just said. But yes, it's literally you're able to do every gym-based exercise in isometric format on one machine, right? And it only takes up 32 square feet, so it's not that big either. It's about the size of a massage table, right? To give a lot of people sort of an understanding, right? And from a business perspective, it's a cash cow for businesses, right? Because it's new, it's innovative, it's awesome, it's highly effective, right? And how we position it and how we recommend it is that individuals, instead of doing 2 hours with a trainer a week, right, which leaves you 5 days to really to kind of screw yourself up a whole bunch, what we recommend is 4 half-hour sessions, right? So we take ownership of our clients with IsoFit, right? And what they're able to see are unbelievable results, whether it's sports performance as an adjunctive sort of training method, or you're new to exercise. Well, if you're new to exercise, you shouldn't be training for an hour anyways, right? So if I can convince you that for the same dollar commitment, that I'm going to take better ownership of you as an individual, I'm going to see you more often, so we're going to develop a better relationship. You're more accountable to me. You're more accountable to you. And, well, guess what you don't have to do if it's a one-on-one session? You don't actually have to think about what you're doing. You're leaving it up to the hands of the professional. And as I said, we're in 30 locations throughout the United States now, and you can find that information online at isofit.com where they're located, and give one of these professionals a call, because they're doing something that you need, right? And they're doing something you need in a format that will actually benefit you, that will not basically break your bank, right? Because none of them, I believe, are charging over $100 for, and we'll call it a half an hour, because they are skilled professionals, right? But it's the best $100 you could spend, because it's on you, and it's going to give you the information necessary to really change the outcome of your life, right? So it's, and for the businesses, simple case study, we put together one for one of the larger facilities in Canada, and they were earning $70 per hour on this machine, and that was their take. And for every time they sat a person down, it was another sort of $35 for the half hour, or $70 on the hour, and it takes up 32 square feet. Find me something that generates that kind of revenue in 32 square feet. So if you got a 500 square foot facility and space is at a premium, well, you can demonstrate squats like every one of your competitors, right? Like, every fitness model you train who's a personal trainer demonstrates squats to their clients. How do you differentiate yourself from the dude who's doing the same damn thing to you and maybe look better, right? So
bingo. This is exactly extremely good point. The people that had it, I went to one reference you gave to me in Chicago. They were like A-class professionals. These were like the creme de la creme of fitness professionals, and they were using your equipment. And so I immediately made this, I'm starting putting the dots together. I'm like, the people who truly know exercise science are the ones who are picking this up first. So it is a very easy, quick, and effective way to separate yourself from the pack by start exploring and implementing this into your business.
Well, exactly. We have 2 units going to the Boca West Country Club in September. Right, they're the #1 leading private residence in the United States, 12 years in a row. Right, so you look at them; they're industry leaders. One of the gentlemen who has one in Connecticut, he trains Odell Beckham Jr. Right, you look at that and go, oh, everyone's heard of him. So this guy, Chris Graney, is Odell Beckham Jr.'s muscle specialist. Right, so, and I'm not stating that Odell uses ISOFIT, I'm just saying Chris Graney deals with Odell. Right, so there's that sort of lineage. And a professional sports franchise who's been using it in Orlando and this other town are buying 2 more. Right, so it's like you look at that and you go, well, there must be something to this. And we have the hospital, or Geneva's basically premier hospital over in Geneva, they're buying some for rehab. So our European distributor basically just contacted me the other day and say, well, we're now going to be selling into Switzerland. So it's, hospitals are now looking at us, sports teams are looking at us, universities are looking at us, and it's, think in terms of, if you know somebody that can better their muscular system, well, here's a simpler way to do it, right? And there's a competing product out there on the market that I wish to replace one day. It's called a treadmill, right? My goal is to replace the bloody treadmill, right? It generates you a per month revenue if you're a business owner, and it hurts your patients. It hurts your clients. It doesn't produce the results you want. And where ISOFIT will generate you a per half-hour revenue as a business owner and provide the scientifically backed benefits of the things we're kind of missing out on, right? So there's many little things that we can think about, right? So it's just a better option. So.
This is awesome. So let's talk about, because obviously you're in Toronto. I'm currently located in Dallas. We have Gary in Oklahoma. We're all converging into Long Beach to meet together for this conference. And one of the things that we wanted to do was also feature a bit more in-depth detail about isometric exercise with Brad Thorpe. As you can hear from this discussion, he is a very, very, very knowledgeable expert within this field, and it's a rare opportunity to be able to work and pick the brain of someone of this caliber. For your pre-con seminar, can you tell me what you guys plan on doing?
So it's about a 6-hour seminar where what we're going to do is, because we'll have a couple of units on site, so it'll be a little bit of a theory side as well as practical. So our goal is basically to give you a brief overview of how isometrics affects the different systems within your body, right? So how it affects your cardiovascular system and my interpretation of why, right? Because it comes back to how do you apply some of this information. And you know, we throw the term out pseudoscience lately because it's, you know, it's like, okay, well, here's a mechanical viewpoint. Here's how they researched it. They didn't come up with a conclusion, but let's apply mechanics to that conclusion, and let's explore that. So we'll be looking at how isometrics affects the cardiovascular system, how it increases blood flow to bone and aids in bone development, right, for the osteogenic and osteoporotic community, how it sort of reduces pain levels in people, right, and then from there, how do you take some of those exercises and break down the ISOFIT to actually target, you know, abs? How do you target your glutes? How do you target your calves, right? And have that sort of applied knowledge, right? Because, you know, one of the things when you're looking at exercise, you never thought about tendon health, right? You never thought about how am I going to increase the tendon quality. So the muscle pulls tendons move joints, right? Through that sort of interlinked mechanism of being, you go muscle, tendon, bone, right? So if you've never trained tendons specifically, well, you're at risk of injury, right? And isometrics is a great way to actually train tendons and be specific to tendons. So we're going to teach all the people all of these little things. And one of the things that we're also going to do is for everybody that comes to the seminar, we're going to give them a $1,000 sort of coupon if they ever want to purchase an ISOFIT. And that'll be good for, you know, a 1-year period, right? So their $200 sort of access fee, really, well, you're going to get that back plus $800. So if you happen to be in the Long Beach area and you want to learn something pretty cool, you know, and, you know, come and listen, right? It will change your life, and it will change the way you approach exercise.
Gary, can you advise, are we going to have continuing education credits on this as well? I hope so.
Yes, we will be covered by the International Sports Sciences Association, ISSA, and currently pending on the American Council of Exercise, but I'm optimistic they will pass it.
And then we now, the note on that is that we get American Council of Exercise every single year, so we're just refiling paperwork. What else? Now, I know that ACE is one of those umbrella type of organizations where the credits can be used in other. They transfer over. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason why we chose ACE is due in part to its acceptance, in that all the other organizations with petition usually take ACE. It's very rare that they do not.
And what are the other organizations that are kind of in that umbrella partnership?
The main ones would be National Academy of Sports Medicine, or otherwise known as NASM, very popular in Southern Cal, Nevada. The others are NSCA, National Strength Conditioning Association, and American College of Sports Medicine. Okay,
so that's a huge umbrella that we have here, and we're bringing in a subject matter expert in isometric exercise. So if you are a fitness professional, you want to augment your business in a way that's going to open up a completely new market, segment yourself from your competition, and then also be able to learn something that's going to improve the health of your clients in an accelerated way above anything else that you have in your toolkit, you got to show up.
Indeed.
Okay, so we had 6 hours. This is October 29th. If you want to register for this, you have to go to fitnessmbasummit.com and then click the Get Started button, and it'll take you through the registration. Okay, so with that, I think my mind is just mind blown. I do have a million more questions, but for the sake of Brad's time and saving the golden nuggets for the summit, we're going to continue that conversation in Long Beach. So Brad, thank you so much for sharing your incredible knowledge. I think I'm going to be stuck on Google tonight, Googling everything that you mentioned, because I'm just very, very fascinated by this, and I got to figure out how I can get some of these isometric exercises worked out into my own personal regime.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and it's been a blast, and I look forward to seeing everyone in Long Beach.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
guys. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.